Our next guest is a New York Times bestselling author who actually coined the term metaverse. In his most recent novel entitled Termination Shock, he is sounding the alarm on climate change and also offering some creative solutions. Please welcome Neal Stephenson to the South by Southwest studio. Hello, sir.
Hi. How are
you? I've been told that you are a science fiction legend and the uber geek. There's a rumor here. When you hear things like this, do you wear it with pride or you just go, ugh?
I think the uber geek is putting it pretty strong. There's a lot of geeks in our civilization right now, so I would hesitate to claim.
Would you say one of the? If someone said one of the,
title.
would you wear that well?
I would. I guess I can go with an uber geek.
I love the humility, sir.
Yeah.
I love origin stories, and we'll talk about the novels. We'll talk about metaverse. I know everyone's asking about that, but I was really fascinated by that you did geography in college.
Yeah, I started out as a physics major, and I did continue to study physics, but I kind of got waylaid into geography because I was fascinated by maps. I'm fascinated by how things are distributed across the Earth's surface and why things are where they are, why they are the way they are. And geography was a way to study that. It was also a way to scam more time on the coolest computer equipment that they had at my university, which was a graphics terminal. So all the other computer stuff was typing on teletypes, basically, but the cartography department in the geography group had a terminal that would show pictures.
And you're like, okay, access to this computer that's gonna run our life in the next 20 years?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming necessarily, but I thought it was cool.
And so the geography led you to actually working with these machines. And you know, many parents are like, I want my son to become a doctor. I want my son to become a lawyer. You come from a distinguished line of what you call propeller heads.
Yeah.
Engineers, like hardcore engineers. And so when you said, Dad, I'm doing geography, your father was like, awesome, that's wonderful.
Well, I think I softened the blow a little bit by sticking with I have a minor in physics, so I never totally walked away from that.
That was your insurance.
Yeah, and there is some technical, you can do geography in different ways, and some are more technical than others. But I think, you know, number one is that the family was pretty chill about letting me try different things. There was not a lot of direct, obvious pressure to go down a particular path. So, you know, I thank my parents and my extended family for just not being that way, you know.
To giving you the space
to
explore.
Yeah. And, you know, if they were worried, then I think they had a lot more to be worried about after college when I tried to become a writer.
They're like, why don't you go back to geography?
Right,
son?
yeah.
Why don't you, I think maps is the future.
Yeah, we liked geography more. Physics was probably the best, but yeah, so, but it worked out.
It's, you know, when you get into writing, for me, one of the hallmarks of a great science fiction writer is they have the ability to ask and wonder what if, and then fill in the dots. It's like, what if there was digitized currency? What if there was augmented reality? What if there was virtual reality? And you kind of touched all that in your first major book that came out. I would say major in the sense that it put you on the map.
That's fair.
It's Snow Crash, right?
Yeah.
It was 92 when it came out.
Yeah.
So when you came up with all these things, you know, the metaverse and all that, it was woven into that book. Again, 92. You've often said in your interviews, I'm just making shit up. All right, which is a very humble way of looking at it. But what is it about, you think, your approach that has made you so prescient when it comes to predicting the what ifs?
It's the trying to think through the fine-grained, weird little details of how technology is actually going to get used, as opposed to just doing broad brush. What if we had rocket ships, you know? You need to get more into the nitty-gritty details of how that affects ordinary people's lives in order for it to be a compelling story. And what we've seen, you know, in like if you look at the 20th century, you know, electricity became a ubiquitous thing that was in everybody's house. And people predicted obvious stuff like light bulbs and washing machines, and that's fine. Those exist.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but if you were to write a story that was just about that, you know, it wouldn't be super compelling.
Right.
But we also got weird things like electric guitars, right? So I don't think anyone foresaw that electricity would be used to create a new musical instrument, or that that instrument would then be picked up by people in the United States and around the world and used to create whole new genres of music that became the most popular music in the world. So that's the kind of detail that can sometimes emerge in an unexpected way from a new technology, that if you can try to see that coming or project that somehow and put it into a story, you end up with a story that is a lot more interesting than washing machines and light bulbs.
And you know, as a writer now, you know, so you're like, okay, I come from propeller heads, I can do the data, I can do the science, I can write the academic research on this. But you sat there and you said, I'm going to take these ideas and I'm going to put it in a fictional narrative. You know, I'm going to do a protagonist, hero's journey, conflict. That's a choice that you made. And why did you go in that route? You said, you know, I'm going to tease this out, even the concept of the metaverse, through a dystopian novel.
Well, I had kind of surprised myself when I was still in college by sitting down and writing a novel, a very short and not very good novel, but it proved that I could do it. I hadn't known that before. And so when I got out of college, I wrote a second book that wasn't that great either. I wrote a few of them, and eventually they started to get published. And so I knew that this was a thing that I could do, and that, you know, it's a very kind of powerful and flexible medium, because you don't need investors, you don't need hardware beyond something to write with. You don't need collaborators. You can just sit down and make something happen. And
pen, paper, coffee.
Yeah. So for me, it's pen and paper now, and at the time it was a word processor. But either way, compared to a lot of projects and the things that you have to do to make something real, writing books is really simple. It's not easy, but
that's good. I think you should say that on the camera. Writing books is really simple. Hey, my latest is 720 pages. Just go for it. But for you, that statement of you said for you, writing books is very simple. Like that's.
It's just simple in the sense of what I said before, that like if you try to start, well, I mean, if you look around here at the studio, you know, to make this video, there's all kinds of equipment and there's wires going all over the place, multiple cameras, a lot of people involved.
Awesome talent.
Awesome talent, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
And you know, and you've got to rent out a nice room at the Marriott to make it all possible. So that's all great, but it's just a lot of overhead. Whereas writing novels, you know, it's just you and the thing you're using to put marks on the page.
Well, and also your talent, your creativity, and your brain. And I would say the two figures that were perhaps most successful in predicting where we are right now would be you and The Simpsons. And so do you ever feel like, damn you, Homer and Simpsons, yeah, I was this close to writers if it wasn't for you? Because they called Donald Trump and they called a lot of stuff. But back in the day, you called, and you know, taking it full circle to the present, you coined metaverse. You imagined it. You said this is what's going to happen, and it must be surreal that now you see Zuckerberg saying, "Oh, by the way, let me introduce Meta to the world."
Surreal is a pretty good word for it. It's been a surreal few months since that happened. I mean, I've been using metaverse for a while in previous decades, but it hadn't gone wide in the same way. And I think when Facebook changed its name, that was kind of like the starting gun that led a lot of people to use it more. It led like right away, within 48 hours, there were other big companies that announced, oh yeah, we're doing the metaverse too, because I think they didn't want one competitor to sort of establish a lock on that name. So it snowballed pretty fast. And now, like walking around South by, I mean, the word is just...
Everything's meta.
Yeah, so I'm like, you know, so...
And for you, it must be meta. You're like, I wrote this in 1992, now it's in my face. You didn't get a check. There's no check from Zuckerberg yet?
No.
All right, just if you're watching, Mark, Neal, you know, you could give Neal some love in the monetary way.
If there's no strings attached.
If there's no, oh, they're very well done. But
Yeah.
you also, when it comes to the metaverse, in your book, you imagined 92. Human beings are going to put on these virtual headsets. They're going to be immersed in a virtual world, right? You also saw Ready Player One. You got Ernst Cline here, whose book Ready Player One was made into a movie. Now people don't laugh at that. You got Oculus. That's real. But there's also AR, augmented reality.
Yeah.
And I read that, you know, when it comes to VR and AR, you're leaning more towards AR. Is that
Well,
correct?
I think they're both really interesting and valuable. It's just, you know, a VR rig is like a big blindfold on your head. That's its strength and its drawback, right? So every photon that comes into your eye when you're in VR is generated by that piece of equipment, and so it's giving you a full seamless reality, which I think is great for certain applications. But most people, I think, after half an hour or an hour of wearing something like that, want to take it off and kind of see the real world again. So AR, you're seeing through the device, and there's fictional content being superimposed or commingled with what's really there. And
It's like Pokemons. You're seeing
Yeah,
the
you
Pokemons through your phone when you scan, but you're still here. There's no rig on your head.
yeah, phone. When you're using a phone in that game, it's just a really simple form of AR, where instead of glasses, it's just a window through which you can see the virtual stuff. I think I could see using that for longer periods of time and using it in different ways, in ways that have something to do with the people and the stuff that's in your environment.
Is there any way, and I'm sure you've thought about this, where we can use it for good?
Oh yeah, I mean, any technology, you know, can go either way, as we've learned.
As we are learning right now.
Yeah. So I mean, there's all kinds of of useful applications for it, and you know, so Magic Leap, where I used to work, which is they're about to come out with the Magic Leap 2, which has been in the news quite a bit lately, and they have for the last couple of years focused primarily on kind of useful applications in the medical field, commercial, industrial, what have you. So there's all kinds of ways to use this stuff for education, for medicine, for you know, all kinds of constructive purposes. But I'm sure people will
Of course, it's human
do
nature.
shitty things with it too.
People are doing shitty things to the earth right now, and your latest book actually gives me some hope, because you tackle the very real horrors of climate change. We don't need to, you know, go over the laundry list of the damage it's doing to the planet, and it will. But in this novel, Termination Shock, you imagine a potential solution, short-term solution to climate change. So you have your hero I want to ask you about this hero. Is like this one of these multi-billionaires who says, all right, governments aren't doing anything. I'm going to come up with a solution. What's the solution that he comes up with?
So solutions, probably a tricky word to use.
Band-Aid, I guess.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid, but it's solar geoengineering, or there's different euphemisms for it, solar radiation management, et cetera, et cetera. But the gist of it is that if it's too hot, you can make it be not quite as hot by bouncing some of the sun's radiation back into space so it doesn't heat up the atmosphere.
Reduce the CO2. or shield it at least.
What we really need to do is get rid of the CO2.
The decarbon.
Yeah.
So we're not doing that yet.
We're not doing that yet. That's the only real answer to the problem. And this guy, solar radiation management, whatever you want to call it, doesn't help at all with getting carbon out of the atmosphere. All it does, it's a sort of temporary Band-Aid or tourniquet that could maybe prevent disastrous things from happening during the decades that it's going to take us to seriously start pulling.
You said decades.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah, it is. Well,
I mean, do we have decades?
Well, that is kind of the central question of this book in a nutshell is, if we've got this time gap where, okay, the problem exists, we see the problem, we understand the problem, we know the long-term solution, which is to pull carbon out, but it's going to take a long time. And in the meantime, carbon is still, the CO2 in the atmosphere is still increasing rapidly. So the question presents itself, is the ethical thing to do one of these Band-Aid solutions? And if so, who should be making the decisions? Should it be subject to some kind of international controls or what have you? And it's an extremely controversial thing in kind of the academic scientific world. But for me, as a writer, if I see people being mad at each other, for me, that just means there's probably a good story there.
There's conflict.
Yeah.
But it's also very topical because we don't have decades.
Right.
Earth is getting hotter. We're not going to renewables faster. Thank you, Joe Manchin and others. Yeah. Appreciate. I think Joe Manchin loves his coal too much, but that's the problem. And you have individuals, for better and worse. You got the Elon Musks and the Bezos. They're like, we have ideas. Zuckerberg's like, I have an idea, and I have the billions to do it. And you're like, Zuckerberg, maybe you should take a pause for a second. But in your book, you entrust this short-term Band-Aid to a billionaire, right? That itself is a controversial move as a writer.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, the weird, we've gotten into a weird place as a society, as you're pointing out, which is that we look to billionaires now to do stuff that our institutions don't seem to be capable of doing anymore. And kind of an interesting meta question about all this is, why is it that 50 or 100 years ago we would have looked to a federal agency or a big established company or something to do these things, but now whenever something needs doing,
Tony Stark, where are you?
Yeah, and so that's just a reality of how things work today, and so I kind of use that as a starting point. And I picked a Texas guy who comes out of a sort of oil and gas and mining background.
Always good guys, by the way.
Yeah. Lovely.
You get the sympathy of the audience immediately.
Right away.
Right away.
Yeah. Because I sort of didn't want to go the tech bro route. Yeah. That's been used a lot, and I kind of like the idea that this was a guy whose family fortune was rooted in the same kinds of resource extraction mentality that had created the problem in the first place. So at some level, he's looking at this as, okay, my family got rich contributing to this problem, so I should be the one who tries to do something about it.
I'm going to Tony Stark this situation, and you come up with a very novel idea rooted in the history of the Earth, of volcanic ashes that get shot out into the sky and then kind of temporarily shield the heat. So, with the I could talk to you for another 20 minutes and nerd out on this, but in the final minute, it is a Band-Aid solution in the book.
Yeah.
It is actually doable, it seems like.
Very.
And maybe someone will be influenced by it because all these tech bros, the Bezos, they read Snow Crash. Yeah. And they cite you as an influence. They're like, Meta. Oh yeah, if he imagined, maybe we could do it. With the 30 seconds we have left and all the horrors that we're facing, especially with climate change and the fact that we're in a pandemic right now, what is giving you, Neal, a man who's made millions, entertained millions, with a dystopian fiction. What's giving you hope right now?
In a way, I think it's just the sheer chaos and the shattering of so many assumptions and institutions that we've seen the last few years. I think the invasion of Ukraine, the pandemic, the sort of social media problems that we've seen, they're all so disruptive, to use a tech bro term, that I'm hoping that it might just create the kind of chaos, creative chaos, and change that makes it possible for people to actually begin doing new stuff.
Dina, that's exactly what we were talking about right before the interview. That's exactly what we were saying. One of my talented crew members that makes this all happen. Because I can't do it by myself like you. Really quickly, can you look at the camera and tell people where you're speaking at South by? You're giving a keynote.
Where I'm speaking? Yeah. I'm speaking at the ballroom. I go where I'm told. I think the
convention center, bro.
The convention center ballroom at 1 p.m. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And the book is?
The book is Termination Shock. And I'll be with Charles Mann, who's the author of some amazing books too, like 1491, 1493, worth checking out.
Thank you for your brain and your curiosity, sir.
Thanks.
Thanks for stopping by to South by Southwest studio. You can watch all of our South by interviews on the South by Southwest TV app, available on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and Amazon Fire. These interviews are also available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SXSW. And for a complete list of our interview schedule, check out sxsw.com/studio. I'm Wajat Ali. Thanks for watching.